Welcome back, and let's do a little bit more on contract to close. And this is a very critical part of any contract, and one that I would pay a lot of attention to if I were you, because it can be something that can save your bacon, as they say, when things go wrong in a transaction. So when you do this contract, I want you to be aware of contingencies that are very important. So, appraisal. That is number one, always number one. The thing is that if you get a mortgage, you're going to have it. But even in cash, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to get an appraisal. You know, if you have a $300,000 home that appraises for $280,000 and you pay cash, you really want to pay that extra $20,000 and understand what contingencies do. They void the contract in a way, and so it is making the contract subject to renegotiation. So like, for instance, that example I just gave, if it doesn't appraise, you can say, look, I'll close if you bring it down to $280,000. If not, I'm out of here and I get my earnest money back, that $5,000, $10,000, whatever the amount happens to be, I get that money back. And you know something, I don't want to lose a dime for anybody. And so contingencies are extremely important on that. So I've been certified as an appraiser in a previous life in real estate. Been quite a few years. I never really got into appraisals. But I wanted to know what appraisers do. I wanted to understand how they value a house and what they do value and what they don't value. And so it was very important training for me. It's really helpful even today. But, you know, one thing they taught us is that don't go back over 6 months on comparables. Go back a year and a half, that's really not current market conditions. 6 months is maximum. Understand that sometimes they may want to go 3 months because you may have hot months and then really things sell well within that 6 months and some slow months, but they're going to look at all the data to try to give the right amount of that house in terms of what it's worth. So, you know, you need to stay, localized. You need to stay within a mile. You need to stay a couple in the neighborhood if you can, and maybe one outside the neighborhood that's close by. These are the things that need to be done. Now, there are exceptions. If you've got a unique property that's hard to find, they may be able to go 20 miles, but that's an unusual situation in this day and age. So they're going to get a like kind. They're going to get as close as they can. If yours is a 4-bedroom you're buying, they're going to find 4 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, they're going to find a 3. They're going to stay within the square footage, maximum probably about 20% up or down, mainly because if you buy a 1,500 square foot home, a 2,500 square foot home is a whole different story. It doesn't match up. It's not like kind. So they're doing their job. Most of the time, it's really good. You can ask for a reappraisal, but in most situations that I've seen, it's right on the money. And so you want to make sure that you get what you pay for. That's something that is typically in every contract that I know. But understand this, state certified contracts, either in my state, which is state law as versus common law, but even in common law states, real estate commissions will put this into the contract. Builders contracts or contracts drawn up by attorneys, man, they don't have to have any of this in there, okay? So understand a state certified contract probably has a lot of what I'm talking about, but a builder doesn't like contingencies. And so you need to make sure you read the fine print and make sure that at the very least, this is in there, and normally even in builder's contract it is. But again, don't go into a contract without contingencies. You need to be an acceptable borrower. You know, you get a pre-qualification letter that says, oh yeah, based on your credit score, based on what we see as your debts, we think you're fine. Now this is without discovery. This is without all the paperwork coming in. And so it's kind of like gives you the ability to write a contract, but it's not a true approval. It's a pre-qualification. Now again, in builders contracts, I have seen that they take this out. They say, if you don't close, you lose your money. And I don't like that. I just don't think it's fair. And I would, if it's not in a builder's contract, have it put in, all right, on the addendums. Say, no, I've got to be an acceptable borrower, because you're not acceptable until the end, until they get all your documents, till they do a final credit pull for you to make sure you haven't done anything stupid, and the appraisal is in. Everything's got to be in before you get final underwriting approval. And so you want to make sure you're contingent up to the last possible moment. Note to self, don't buy anything in the meantime until you close. Sometimes when you buy that or get a car that's going to cost you $700 or $800 a month, it may throw you right out of qualifying. So just look, just try to stay clean. Unless you've got a boatload of money, don't do anything until you close and you'll be fine. Clear title. I think this is something that's extremely important because there's a difference between clear title and safe title. Clear title means everything's perfect. All right. And we're going to issue title insurance that guarantees it. Now, again, we're going to go more into title insurance, but not every state is possibly going to require that you get title insurance. Ours does, even on cash. So the thing is clear title means no objections of any kind. Now, let me tell you what a typical objection is where you get what's called safe title, which can be okay, which is, okay, we don't know in new construction where they're going to put the utility easement on the left side of the house, the right side of the house. You do this concrete pad that you put a compressor on for your central heat and air system, and it could be within the utility easement on the side. They're going to call that an objection. And something, it is, you don't have to close, by the way. And I've had people that are like crazy, down to the last detail, and I'm only going to go on clear title, and that is a contingency. I normally tell people that that's not a big deal because, first of all, it's a slab that's about 4 inches thick. They can go underneath it. It's rare they have to do anything. Now, where I would say you have a utility easement in the back where you might have a problem if you put a pool in and somehow it wasn't done to spec, wasn't done to basically the permits, and so that pool is in the utility easement. It gives them the right to go ahead and tear up that pool. So there can be some that are very, very serious, but most of the time it's minor. But again, it's a nice contingency to have, especially if you're nervous about some other things within the contract. Encroachments, that's a write out. You do not want encroachments. I used to build home, and I had a situation where I had a lot. You do a pre-title work, you do a survey, and what they found out is the folks next door decided they wanted 5 more feet of my lot. Well, I couldn't start building or really doing anything until that fence was moved back. And I had to protest it because if you don't, after a certain amount of years, they can claim it as their own, and you don't want that. Encroachments are not good. That's something that's coming in or taking over part of your property that shouldn't, and you need to say, that is something you can't even want to do with clear title. You do not accept encroachments. And by the way, a lender won't accept it at all. So make sure all of this is in the contract. Now, other contingencies can be put into the contract. Especially if you're in a troublesome situation or something fairly simple. I just did contracts on 3 duplexes that were existing. They all had leases. In other words, 6 units had leases. What we put into the contract, subject to approval and observation of the leases. I want to see what's in the lease. There may be something I really don't like that it's going to screw things up. And by the way, when you close on a property and there's a property manager, you have the right to use your own property manager. And, you can't get the tenant out of there, but you can change property management. So the thing is, I want to see all the details, what's in there, so I know that these are good, properties, and they have good tenants, and the lease is something that I am willing to accept. So there can be situations that you put extra contingencies in the contract and realize that's negotiable. But that's one that I do all the time. If it's already leased and you're buying it, I want to see the leases. I want the property manager to see the leases before we ever say, we're going to go ahead and close on this. So contingencies are important. They are there for your protection, and you need to make sure that they're in there. I don't want to see anybody lose $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it happens to be. I want you to have outs in this contract if it's not right. Regardless of whether it's cash or financing, you need to protect yourself, understand contingencies, talk to your specialist, talk to your realtor about this, make sure that you're completely covered, because otherwise it can be a money-losing situation for you. We don't want that to happen. So now that we've done that, we're going to go into the next aspect of contract to close, which is choosing the right insurance policy. You may think that's a simple thing. We're about to explain why it's a little bit more complicated for an investor than an owner occupant. So stay tuned, more is coming.